then with that in mind, we won't take too much of your
Okay.
time because you're pretty darn busy.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
So I'll just dive into the first question I have is, so you were a panelist on our last People's Review Live when we had a great discussion about Wyoming's budget crisis, and we explored the question a little bit, does Wyoming's state budget reflect our values?
Mm-hmm.
And during that conversation, you talked briefly about what you saw as a potential silver lining to the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and about how people view and think about teachers in particular, I think. But we didn't really have time to delve into that idea any further. And so could you talk a little bit about your observation and this potential silver lining?
Yeah, kind of where I was leading with that the other night when we had talked, when I was participating in the panel, is when we talk about budgets, right, and education, from what I see and experience and from what I hear, it's a big topic, whether that be controversial or just a lot of conversations about it because of the constitutionality of having to fund education here in our state. And so coming into this session, I know there's going to be, push to cut that, to cut educational funding. And from what I've seen and what I've heard talking to my constituents in District 33, mainly represents, encompasses the reservation tribal members, from guardians and parents and grandmas and grandpas. They've been frustrated. It takes a lot of skill to try to encourage their children and grandchildren to stay focused and on task, to get on the Zooms, to get on the computer, to do their homework, to really fill that role in trying to explain the work that their children have to do. And so I that's what I meant by the silver lining, is that I think this pandemic, and the silver lining is really looking at the commitment that our educators and our administrators do in our educational systems for children. And I can say they can have one child or two children, but you think of a teacher who has 20 plus kids in a classroom trying to teach, trying to navigate that. I think it just opened a lot of parents' eyes and appreciated that. I really appreciate school. I appreciate our schools here in our districts. I appreciate the teachers that teach, whether it's sports, extracurricular activities, trying to navigate that during a pandemic, that the roles that parents and guardians had to take on, despite working and taking care of their households and going and do their jobs. But I think that just really emphasized what a teacher does and what they do for our kids. So that was my point. And I'm kind of want to push back on this cutting the education too, because we have the recalibration, that coming up, and the committee specifically looking at that. And I don't think we should do anything harsh to funding right now. I think the other silver lining with education too is really making us think outside of the box. I remember talking to an auntie at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were at a stay-at-home order here on the reservation. And she said, you know what, for the first time in a lot of years, we were able to cook dinner. We sat down at our table, something we've never done for a long time. And I got to visit with my grandchildren. She has a grandson and a granddaughter. And she said, we really got to talk about history. I got to share grandma and grandpa's stories with them. But not only that, I was able to share more of our culture with them, where pre-pandemic, we were always in a hurry. I would never be home. I'd be out because she's an educator too. But two of her grandchildren live with her. And she just said, I got to talk about history. I got to talk about our family. I got to talk about our culture. And so a lot of those silver linings is it also was good during the pandemic as well. I'm not saying parents struggled and did really bad, but I'm just saying it slowed things down where they could have conversations with their children and grandchildren as opposed to a fast-paced life, before the pandemic, and just really having conversations about who they are, where they come from. And I was telling her, I was like, man, Auntie, isn't that so educational? Like, that's an educational moment. Like, they may not be in school, but to listen to grandma and have her reminisce about her life and their great grandparents' lives. I mean, that's an opportunity in and of itself. And so I guess that's what I mean by silver linings. There's good and bad on both sides, how you look at that. So
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for asking the question.
Well, I just, speaking as a parent of two young kids, first of all, I just want to thank you for making those points. And from my experience, both of those things are just spot on observations that I haven't given much thought to. Um, gosh, just how valuable public education is, just to the just allowing us to be able to have a home and have jobs, and while our kids are getting a great education, I do have a new appreciation for that and for that value. And it's hard to teach your kids sometimes, your own kids. I think they learn better from somebody else often. At least that's been my experience in my home. But the other thing, though, is true too. Like, it's been really great for our family in the sense that we're spending more time together. We've gotten closer, and yeah, we're telling more stories, right? And I think about growing up. Such a huge part of my identity growing up was as an Italian American. And the reason was because my grandparents told stories all the time. They told stories about what it was like in the 1920s growing up in Buffalo, New York, and they told stories about their lives. And that's just such a huge part of your social, political, spiritual education that happens in your family. And so I just think what you're saying is spot on, and I appreciate you making those points.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think that appreciation that parents have for the educators, I think that'll help strengthen relationships. If they were bad in the past, and there was bumps along the road in educational paths, but I've seen that a lot too. I've heard comments a lot. I have younger sisters who still have kids in the educational system too, and they're just like, man, just hats off to these educators. This is really, really, really tough, really tough. And so, and then just the importance, I think, of all the homework. You really have to have homework, and it's looking at homework in a whole new way. Maybe we discounted it, but it's just like, it's really important. Like, what's this work? What are you being taught? What's the subject matter? And I think just slowing all of that down during the pandemic, and having parents, really look at what they're being taught, My daughter, she was able, the first time, we had virtual school, we had gone back, and she was just really, had a conversation with her, and she was just really appreciative of what they talked about. And what they had talked about was, my granddaughter had switched schools. So she has always gone to a school that was predominantly Northern Arapaho children attended it for the large part. But she switched schools, and she goes to an elementary school where there's many Eastern Shoshone tribal, students there. And so when they talked about history, the teacher still included the Northern Arapaho tribe and its members into the conversation. And my granddaughter was able to participate and contribute to the conversation there. And my daughter said she really had a sense of pride. And then just having my daughter have that appreciation, because it's always, they say, the two tribes here have a lot of conflicts. But I think right from that point, my daughter was unsure of having her daughter transfer to a different school. But right from that point, she gained appreciation, like, wow, you're encompassing both tribes, and I'm feeling pretty good here. That's making me feel pretty good. But more importantly, it made my granddaughter feel really, really proud, that they wanted to hear about the Northern Arapaho tribe and some of its, traditions and stuff too. So that's important too. I just wanted to share that.
That's cool. I know Anna had a question for you too, just
Sure.
before we go.
Yeah, so obviously we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic, and as our state continues to face declining revenue streams, there's a lot of legislative uncertainty. And so what's on your mind as we move forward during the upcoming general session?
What's on my mind in this upcoming general session is I'm worried about partisan politics. I really want us to focus on the policies at hand, the problems at hand, that's presented to the states and its constituents. And we need to get along. We need to work across the aisles. We need to communicate. And I really think there's going to be a silver lining to the Zoom session that we do via the 66th legislature. The way we're starting out, I think there's going to be silver linings. And I think it's going to push us to communicate in ways more so than we would have done differently if we were in person. I just really believe that in my heart. It's going to make us get out of our box, and whether that's emailing or just having a good old fashioned phone call, like I got to look at people's numbers and I just have to call them, right? Like I can't talk in person. And we've done that before, growing up, the landlines, the telephones, that's all you had. We didn't have cell phones. And so I think a construction around how we communicate is going to be important. And so we really got to look at those problems facing Wyoming and how do we solve that and set the partisan politics aside and come up with the best solutions. And working together is going to be very crucial with that.
Thanks so much. I like to make an observation as an outsider, someone who's not in the legislature. It seems to me that the best leaders see silver linings, and so I hope that we, the people of Wyoming who observe the process, so appreciate legislators who are looking to solve problems and looking to the future and looking at the silver linings and trying to make the best of things, as opposed to sometimes people try to tear each other down. And so really appreciate your leadership in that regard. So just
thank you.
Really happy you're there.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.